And I want to say welcome to ministers, welcome to the Chief Medical Officer, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health, DITES, of course, and welcome to the media. It's good to be here. Before we get started, I'd like to have Minister Hodge lead us in a word of prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Dear Lord, we come before you this afternoon giving you thanks and praise for yet another opportunity to gather together to praise your name. At this time, dear Lord, we bring before you the families of all those who are experiencing loss and grief at this time over the loss of loved ones, and we ask for your guidance as those families go through their difficult times. We pray for this country. We pray for all of those who are charged with the responsibility of keeping our borders safe, our nurses, doctors, taxi drivers, hospitality workers, and all others. We bring this before your name this afternoon. Amen.
Thank you, Minister. I just want to say, to echo, our heartfelt condolences to those who've lost loved ones, and to those who are sick and suffering. We want to wish, God's blessings and healing hands upon them. Right now, we'd like to say to the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and especially to the people from Nevis, our heartfelt condolences on the passing of Ambassador Vance Emery, patriot, a man whose legacy will live on, who great cricketer, represented these islands, the combined islands and the Leeward Islands well, and the Premier of Nevis and his continue in politics and also in Caribbean integration. So just want to wish his family, his wife Vanita, and the rest of the family, the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, our heartfelt condolences from myself, my family, the people of Anguilla, and the government of Anguilla. Also want to say that yesterday I was invited to Saint Martin to the swearing-in ceremony for the new president of the collectivity of Saint Martin, Mr. Louis Mussington, who does have some Anguillian connections. I want to wish him the best as he takes on this task of leading his country, our neighboring island, and our cousins, and in some cases brothers and sisters, to prosperity. We certainly know that we all are recovering from Hurricane Irma, from the COVID pandemic, and certainly wish him well as he has to deal with some of his nation's issues, and we pledge to work together so that we can continue to make sure that our islands stay safe and grow, and that we take care of our people. Moving on, I'll turn over to the health team to lead us in the updates on COVID, vaccinations, protocols, and certainly I want to thank the health team for the stalwart work that has been done. They have done yeoman service throughout the past 2 years. March 20th of this year was 2 years from the time Anguilla's borders were closed. March 11 was 2 years from the time that COVID-19 was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. And January of 2020 is when this team, the health team, started working on having to deal with coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, which at that time was new to everyone. And I certainly want to thank them for the time, the expertise that has been put in, and for helping us to get this country to where we are today, where we have people are healthy. We know we've lost 9 lives, and that happened. We have been able to control the spread of the virus, and we also have been able to open the economy so that and we're getting back to the touristic numbers that Anguilla is known for. And certainly, it's the work of this team, the health team, and the government of Anguilla that has made it possible. And we hear that when we talk to those who visit our lands. The Minister of Tourism and I were fortunate to be at a meeting recently, and we were told that it's because of the way that the protocols have been handled steadily, not just being willy-nilly and making decisions and opening things up too quickly, is why people want to come here, because they feel safe in our midst. So again, thank you. I just wanted to pass that on to you, that there are those visitors to our lands who are complimenting the good work that has been done. Thanks again.
Thank you as well, Premier. I'd like to certainly echo those sentiments, and not only for us around the table, but for the entire health team, which included so many people on different levels. We had nurses, we have respiratory therapists, we have public health officers, we've had public health officers 1, 2, and 3 at different levels with different level of expertise. We've had special constables who were very faithful to the duties in terms of ensuring our borders were protected. I don't think many people realize, when we had our first shutdown last year, even up to this year, the breaches which we would have had in our borders, and the potential breaches that we certainly would have protected ourselves from. So to the special constables as well, we want to thank them so much for their steadfast work. It wasn't easy. All hours of the night at different beaches, checking on homes, people absconding from quarantine and so forth. So it's been difficult. As of this month, we have pulled back a lot of those responsibilities. I don't think people realize. But the mere fact that our ministers, people can go to St. Martin for a meeting and come back the same day or come back the next day without having to be tested, without having to go to quarantine. The multiple layers of policies we've had to put in place to allow that is phenomenal, not only through vaccinations, but also through people ensuring that we've kept up with these vaccinations, and to ensure that people have ensured that we have, the social distancing, to ensure that we've gone through testing, and it's been a whole raft of policies over the last 2 years. And we are to a point now where we can relax, and we have relaxed quite a bit of our procedures. In fact, as of Friday, persons in certain categories can come to Anguilla now without applying on the portal. That's the first step. The second step will be to certainly remove more things in the future as we go along. But we want to thank the steadfast support of the people of Anguilla, who have really been with us over the last 2 years. I know we have not seen eye to eye in a lot of the policies, but that's just the way it is. I mean, humans are not made to be shut down and locked up, and certainly we only did those things that we thought were necessary, and we didn't go beyond that. And I think we met midway in a way that we thought would be enough to protect the people without going overboard. There are still some countries in this world right now that even if you're suspected of COVID, you lock up in hospital for 21 days. There's still some countries that, it's just really draconian. There's still some countries that have lockdowns, and certainly, but we have come to a point over gradual reduction of these measures that we think we are quite safe, and we keep to monitor the situation. So I'm going to ask the CMO to brief us on what's happening now, and then we'll take it from there.
Take this off. Good afternoon. So on the global scene, which is where we usually start, On a positive note, notwithstanding the spike that was mainly attributed to the second version, the BA2 version of the Omicron, WHO actually reported for the second week in a row decreases in cases worldwide to the tune of 14%. On the other hand, they noted increases in the deaths, but the caveat there was that there were some changes in the definition of deaths and some revisions of reports of some countries, right? So they're looking at that now going forward as not necessarily a true increase. We'll see how that goes, right? But by and large, we're still looking at high viral transmission, 10 million new cases in the previous week and 45,000 new deaths for that week. So an improvement, but certainly it's not our way through the declaration of the pandemic or the emergency being over. And the responses are really becoming more and more local and more context-driven, vaccination coverage being a big part of what countries are prepared to do at this point in time. So just to stick up in there, and also the caveat, WHO must, as a public health institutions, are responsible of doing, always those little warnings to say, for example, we're seeing decreases, but we're also noting decreases in testing worldwide because of resources. We have also taken certain steps to decrease the testing because certain things cannot be maintained indefinitely. So there's always that, but a bona fide appearance of a decrease overall. And also, we're not sure what's on the horizon. To that, we'll note that the Europe, having recently more or less gone through a Omicron wave because of the BA2, the United States now seeing some optics. We're not sure if it's going to be as huge as the original Omicron variant, but again, we cannot understate that there are still lots of unknowns, although things are looking more positive than negative, quite frankly. And so, of course, the dominant the variant that continues to dominate is your Omicron, the BA2 variant. We're seeing for Anguilla, taking it right home, we got some samples back for sequencing on Friday. So far, we are still seeing the Omicron dominance. We haven't seen the BA2 version detected as yet. So over 95% of the last samples we sent, about 45 samples since the beginning of January, end of December, when we detected Omicron. We're still seeing BA1 variant, and it's 95% Omicron. 43 out of those 45 samples are Omicron. So to date, as of this morning, we've confirmed 2,717 cases, of which 2,692 persons have recovered and 9 have died. Currently, we have 16 active cases. Just incidentally, in terms of looking at these health systems and so on, we're happy to report that now we're down to 1 person in the isolation unit. We've had the same 2 gentlemen admitted there for the last 3 weeks or so. So there's one, the currently admitted person, the 81-year-old vaccinated male. So that's good news. So we haven't seen any surges in our admissions to the isolation unit for more than a month. That's really remarkable and good news. So in terms of our vaccination picture, as of April 1st, we have administered 10,622 first doses, 9,874 second doses. And finally, we can say that we have a little increase in terms of the coverage that will respond to 64% of the population having received 2 doses, fully vaccinated, 69% of the population having received at least 1 first dose. We've had 2,630 persons having received a booster. That corresponds to about 27% of those eligible, at least the over 18s rather, having received a booster. So that's a little increase from where we were a few weeks ago, certainly. Looking at the developments, we would have noted that the pediatric doses were limited in supply and limited in the shelf life just because of the logistics around the thawing and delivery to the countries. So we have 508 in total pediatric doses administered in the preceding weeks, and this includes 294 first doses and 214 second doses. So that's about, for the former, 20% of the estimated population having received at least a first dose. That is of the 5 to 11-year-olds estimated population. As we indicated last week, we have to do a pause because we are literally, our stocks have expired, are about to expire. So we have to have a pause until we need to receive a next shipment of doses. It's very important for parents who are interested now to still register your interest. The Beat COVID website is going to help us when we need to go to the UK again with numbers of estimated doses needed. Right? So that is if your child has not yet received a first dose and you have not yet registered, please go to the beatcovid19.ai website and register your interest. Just a reminder, back when we introduced vaccination for 12 to 17-year-olds, For a brief period, one dose was seen as a complete vaccination, and shortly thereafter, the guidances were revised to say 2 doses were also necessary. We just want to remind persons that if your 12 to 17-year-old has only received 1 dose, is eligible for a second dose, and please do so. You're urged to get the second dose at any of the available polyclinics. And the schedule for this week will be as follows: for Pfizer first doses, second and booster doses for 12 years and older only. Western Polyclinic, by appointment, call 497-4020, and that's on Thursday between the hours of 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. For Western Polyclinic, the number is 497-6421 or 476-6392 for appointment on Friday, 8th of April, 1:30 p.m. to 3:45 p.m. So just be reminded that booster doses are also available to persons who received their second dose more than 3 months ago, including persons 16 and older, and clinically vulnerable persons 12 to 15 years of age. And we just want to reiterate that with the necessary and warranted dropping of restrictions going forward, we still have to mention that we're not completely out of the woods, and individual responsibility becomes more and more important. From the time we dropped the quarantine on our first an arrival test, we knew there were cases that we would be missing. Say that those who are fully have boosters or their vaccinations are current, we still know that they might be the least risky group to drop testing in, but there's still a risk as well. Incidentally, yesterday we have a first person, a boosted person, but negative on arrival, negative pre-arrival, but testing positive for return travel to their country. So it's just to say, it's not to scare anybody, it's a new day, we're trying to live with this thing. We will be missing some cases, and vaccination has become more and more and more important. Again, especially for those who are vulnerable, the older age groups, those with underlying conditions and so on, and including your boosters. This is the way everything is going. No one's talking about lockdowns and going back to the way things were. We suffered a lot, and there's nothing else to offer at this point in time. If there was an insight in terms of a cure or getting rid of this thing, we'll say just hold on, but that's not the case. We have to move forward, and we can protect ourselves through vaccination in addition to the basic public health measures which we should keep in mind.
And finally, with regard to personal responsibility, one of the responsibilities that persons have who will be allowed to go to Samant for the day trips is to test on day 4 when they return. There are quite a few people who have not been turning up for testing on day 4 for whatever reason. Some of them we have to track down, some of them just won't come. Just to remind you that it is an offense under the law not to come to be tested after day 4. So we can actually take you through a process if you do not come and test on day 4. And this is a responsibility, because certainly we're not testing you before you go. We're not testing you after you come back, because those tests won't mean anything. But at a day 4 test, it's critical for us to see what's happening, not only in terms of you personally, but to get a trend to see if we can further relax these measures. Just to let you know, we have picked up some positives on day 4. Persons who would have left there would have been no other place, and they would have left there negative, presumably. They've gone St. Martin. They've come back, but that's the same there overnight. And on day 4, they've tested positive, and we can give you those numbers. So we're not doing this stuff willy-nilly. We're not just pulling this stuff out of the top of our heads. We're doing this stuff, these measures, to ensure we have an idea of what is the epidemiology of people going St. Martin and coming back. And that will give us more information to make more decisions. If nobody was turning up positive, we can say, okay, we're going to drop it. There's no need because the risk is low, blah, blah, blah. But obviously people are turning up positive, so there's stuff still happening through people going to St. Martin for the day and coming back. So we're imploring you, if you've gone to St. Martin for the day, or if you spend one night, if you've been given that privilege to go and come back without having to test, without having to go on a portal, we're asking that based on law, you have to come to test on day 4. That is not something that's optional. It's a requirement under law that you come and test on day 4. So those persons who have not come to be tested, we urge you to come so that they don't have to go the other step. It is critical. It also protects you. It also protects the country and allows us to be open up in a more responsible manner. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much. Very informative. Any questions from the media?
Good afternoon. From the Daily Herald, 3 very quick questions. Is the drive-in or drive-through testing facility still up and running? Yes?
Yes, it's still up and running. We've extended the hours actually, and we're extending the days. We are now going to be testing on Saturdays, and we're now going on, I think, to what, 3 o'clock? In the afternoon. So instead of stopping at midday, and we've done that for a couple of reasons. People are going to be coming in more now, untested and so forth. So we're going to want people, if stuff pops up, we want people to be able to come and test more easily. Plus, we want to make it easier for people to test for onward travel. So we want to ensure that people get what they need to go. So not only are we keeping it open, we're extending the hours and putting in a new day. I think with the exception of Good Friday, I think we're going to close on Good Friday because our staff would like that day off. So we're going to close on Good Friday. But other days other than that, we're going to be open every day of the week down to, I think, out of 3 in the afternoon. But we'll get the exact time for you shortly.
So 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, 7:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. But not Good Friday.
Okay. Second quick question is, you mentioned going to the Western Polyclinic for the kids to be inoculated, but there was a memo from the health department saying that the Western Polyclinic was going to be closed from, I think, the 31st. So that was just a one-day closing?
We'll have to follow up on that for you because we were not aware of that. But I know we had stopped doing a couple of the immunizations in the clinics because we went back to the schools. We went back to the schools, I think, last week. So we had stopped giving those adult doses at the clinics because we wanted to go back into schools to get a second dose and to get additional first doses. But we are not aware of any further closures, but we can get information for you if needs be. That was probably it. That was probably it. That was probably it.
1 week we were just focusing back on the schools, yeah.
My last question is, Anguilla is still listed by the CDC and State Department as level 3. Any feel for whether we will drop more?
Based on the current trends, we should be dropping, certainly. So remember, it's a range in terms of what the expectations per 100,000 population. When our Omicron surge, we went up to level 4, and then level 3, we were at the high end, and so we're coming down. But certainly this last set of data showed a decrease, and we expect that we will decrease again in terms of the level as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they access for information almost every 3 or 4 weeks or thereabout, and we just sent them a new set of data last week. So we're hoping, and the data looked quite good, to be honest with you, in terms of our numbers. So we're expecting that we will drop again. Let's just keep our fingers crossed.
Just do you all have a record of persons who go to St. Martin and come back? I mean, you just spoke about persons not coming in to get tested. Are you able to contact those persons?
Of course, yes. We have a record of them. We know who they are.
Any other questions for the health team? If they are not, then I want to thank them for their time here today, for the information, for their service, and release you so that you can get back to doing the good business and good work that you do. Thank you. We'll turn to the Minister for Social Development and Education to give us an update. She has another engagement, so we'll ask you to be guided accordingly.
Good afternoon, everyone. My update actually is really short today. I just wanted to start off by congratulating the senior female football team and wishing them the best as they travel to Antigua today to represent Anguilla. Our athletes have been preparing for a number of international events that will be coming up later this year, including the Commonwealth Games. At the end of July, the team has already been selected, and they are due to depart the last week in July 2022. From since last week, Friday, and continuing this week, we will have some novelty sports days. And the Valley Primary School had their novelty sports day today. And there was a novelty sports day on Friday, but they'll continue throughout this week, in addition to the Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School Road Race, which will take place on Thursday, the 7th of April. And finally, on some sadder news, we announced the Education's Memorial Service for teacher Vida Harrigan, which will take place tomorrow at 1 p.m. at the Rodney MacArthur Ray Auditorium. And so I invite the general public to pay their respects tomorrow, as well as when the family release the funeral service arrangements for our past principal.
Are there any questions? Looks like Mr. Richardson. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Webster. One question for the minister as relates to a earlier statement that you made concerning the legalization of the marijuana plant. I know I had some interviews with one of the former attorney generals, and he said quite clearly that the whole question about legalizing of this plant is left up and solely to the government of Anguilla. And hearing you, one press conference indicating that you had to seek whether the advice or the guidance or something of the British government, asking what would have been the present Attorney General's position as relates to the legalization of this plant.
Well, I can't speak to the Attorney General's position on the legalization of the plant. I think all Attorney Generals are supposed to simply advise government as to the standing of policy and whether or not their policy can be pursued. I can say with full assurance that legalization is not simply a matter for devolved governments like the government of Anguilla. This is a matter that falls under international treaties such as the International Convention on Narcotics, which is a 1971 convention. And that convention, which the UK signed to and extended to all of her overseas territories, speaks specifically to the legalization of legalization of cannabis specifically. It, however, does give scope to its signatories and who they extend their treaties to create frameworks around what the decriminalization of cannabis will look like in those territories. I say that because, of course, I had the question from Ms. Hennis last week, speaking specifically to other overseas territories. What is their status? As you would have known, BVI would have tried to create a framework for medical marijuana. However, that has not gotten assent. So they've created the framework, but because the British government and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office have the Treaty on Narcotics, they have not assented to their legislation. The legislation in Bermuda that passed through the upper chamber of the parliament in Bermuda similarly was not assented to, so it is simply in their legislature. Of course, I was saying last week that there is a little bit of a difference in Anguilla compared to the other overseas territories because our governance structure is not structured the same as, let's just say, Bermuda, which has its own executive body apart from the governor. So the situation in all of the overseas territories is that while we can work with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to determine what decriminalization looks like, it is unlikely, given the framework of the Convention on Narcotics, that if the United Kingdom has not taken the step to legalize marijuana, that we can simply take the step to legalize marijuana without going through a conversation and getting assent and permission from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to do so. So it's going to be very difficult to step ahead if the treaty specifically speaks not to doing so. And that's the only reason why I was trying to bring it to the attention of a number of persons. I spoke repeatedly about doing it in a phased manner, so starting with possession, then looking at what is it for medical and what is the framework for cultivation. And those are still things that we're examining, but we're trying to ensure that we do them properly so that we can get them passed and pass and through regulations, because in our legislation it allows us to do decriminalization through regulations. But what is the scope of decriminalization is very different for us than, let's just say, Amsterdam or other territories or countries. So I don't know if that answers your question, but you can let me know.
Thanks for the answer, but the other thing that comes to mind is that then there probably will be no reason at all to even indicate to anybody that any particular government or party will ever want to even give the young people in particular a little ease as it relates to the use of marijuana, because that, based on what you're saying, Madam Minister, is primarily out of the remit of the local administration. Because I was of the opinion then, after hearing from you, whether or not the local administration can go ahead, test the waters among the parliament itself, and then if the parliament agrees, let it stay there and wait for step 2. But if you're going to wait to see whether or not the British government will consent or assent to it, most likely we may never see that happen. So I guess the people of Anguilla will want to know their government's position as it relates to the legalization of the same thing.
Been very clear from the beginning, from campaigning to being in office to the public consultations that I've had in the House of Assembly, to say that we are not going towards legalization. We are actually looking at decriminalization. And the reason why I have specifically said decriminalization on multiple occasions is because I know, based on the International Convention on Narcotics, that as a non-self-governing territory, we are not allowed to simply go into legalizing marijuana. That is something that Antigua can do, because Antigua is an independent territory. That is something that a lot of other territories can do because they have that ambit. What I have limited the discussion to is decriminalizing, because decriminalizing is something that we can look into doing. And that is something that we intend to do. It's just about the methodology used to get to decriminalizing, and that is very different to what Bermuda and what BVI have done, because what Bermuda and BVI are doing is about the medical marijuana industry and cultivation. Those are two very different aspects of the Convention on Narcotics. I've spoken to a number of persons who may use the plant, as we say colloquially, and they understand that marijuana and cannabis, it's more than simply decriminalizing, that there's cultivation, that there's the industry of usage, of passes, of grams and amounts that you use with dispensaries. They understand all of those things. So when I tell them specifically what I am looking at, I told them I don't want to give them false expectations, and I'm not going to say I am the queen of legalizing, because I've never indicated that I was going towards legalizing. What I've indicated to them was, let's look at decriminalizing, let's see how we can get it done, and let's do that. So, yeah? Okay.
Honourable Minister, KCN Channel 4. I'm looking at the supplementary sporting events schedule that have been put out, and I'm seeing novelty sports. I do not understand what is novelty sports. My concern I'm looking at, we used to have kiddies cricket and grassroots cricket here in Anguilla. What has become of those two sporting events for the schools?
Well, the novelty sports is really about having a fun day for kids so that they can get out of the classroom and be able to engage in physical activities, and really focus on their well-being overall. That's the reason why we put together novelty sports. So it's not simply running. You'll see them doing the potato sack race and other exercises. So it's not limited specifically to just running. It's also other activities. As it relates to kiddie cricket, you would know, or you may be aware, that at the beginning of term 1, the decision was made to pause all extracurricular activities throughout the school year because of the losses in learning that we had been experiencing across the education sector. And as a result, some of those events may have been canceled. some of the kiddies cricket and other sporting events would have been under the auspices of the relevant associations. So those associations would have put on those events. We would have had, some of the associations may not have been able to put on all of those events. And so we've had a reduced schedule in other sporting events as well. So it's not necessarily that they are included in this Novelty Sports Day specifically, but I'm sure that the associations will continue to work together to ensure that these kiddies cricket continues to be part of the sporting calendar.
I know Scotiabank used to be sponsoring the kiddies cricket, and the grassroots cricket is something come out of the West Indies Cricket Board. So who is totally responsible of those two things happening here in Anguilla?
Well, whatever comes down from West Indies cricket would go through the Cricketing Association of Anguilla. So that would be the responsible body. And you know that and you know that there's also going to be the Premier Cricket League. So that is also another part of the sporting, well, becoming a bigger part of the sporting calendar, right? But just to end off in terms of sports, we do also have our Crifta Games athletes who are preparing to leave Ireland for the 16th to the 18th to prepare and to compete and represent Anguilla. So we're continuing to wish them all the best, and I hope that we can give them their support in any way that they need in the upcoming weeks.
Date for the Queen Baton arriving on Anguilla?
Yes, there is a date. I don't have it at the top of my head, but I can inform you after the press conference.
Thank you, Minister. You may leave. I know you have another engagement. We'll now go to the Minister for Home Affairs to update us.
Thank you, Premier. My update is a short one, just to let you know that we are continuing our series of familiarization visits to the hotels tomorrow. Yeah. We are heading down to Belmont Capjuluca tomorrow afternoon. This will be the third visit that we are undertaking, and I just want to put on record my thanks to the management of Aurora and Malihana for the excellent work they did in preparing for our visit, and I expect no less tomorrow. On both occasions, we were able to tour the various facilities where staff worked in the greater concentration, things like the kitchen, laundry, back of house. Not quite sure what that means. Back of house. Well, yeah. Yes. Yes, landscaping and stuff, yes. And we were able to see, the different staff at work in their various environments. And then we would have met with the senior management of the property. And then lastly, we would have had a chance to meet basically with the lower ranks of staff. So we're expecting the same tomorrow. And as I have indicated already, once we have gone through that entire visit, I'll be able to come to the media and give you a more comprehensive synopsis of our findings at those properties. That's it for me for now. Any questions?
Mr. Hodge, and then during your visits, even in terms of the reports coming from employees, are there any complaints about sexual harassment? Is that an issue for us here, for the Ministry of Labor?
Not that has come out at the visits. I can't say if those complaints have been made directly to the Labor Department, but not during our visits, no.
From the Daily Herald again, not to put you on the spot, but are there any trends that you see developing in your 3 visits so far, either negative or positive?
Yeah, the workers by and large have been talking about 2 main things. One, in terms of the understudy, and 2, as well as the minimum wage. And both of those, I have assured them, are well in hand in terms of the ministry and department's preparations in that regard, yes.
Good afternoon. Mr.
Good afternoon,
Hodge.
sir.
A question for you. It has come to my attention that Aurora in particular is still advertising job vacancies overseas online. Some time ago, you were questioned on this particular matter, and you had indicated that you was going to be looking into it. Could you tell us here this afternoon what steps have been taken to have that practice stop? Because it would appear that a lot of jobs are being advertised overseas and online, and persons from overseas could apply for jobs, and Anguillians here who don't have the facilities or being able to access that media platform is left out. So the question, sir, is since the last time you mentioned, if you could tell us what steps have been taken by the ministry to ensure that this practice don't continue.
Right. Thanks for the question. So, Mr. Richardson, there's a very clear process that is followed in terms of job vacancies. And a requirement of those is that those positions have to be advertised locally. Because when the documentation is sent in, the Labor Department will look specifically at the venues where these positions were advertised. So there is a requirement that every single position must be advertised on a local medium. If the property wishes to advertise overseas, they must also ensure that equal opportunity is given locally, because that's part of the requirements that will be checked to ensure that this is undertaken. And if that is not done, they will have to go through the right way.
Take it for granted so that all the applications or all the persons from overseas who are presently employed at Aurora, or in particular any establishment, especially in the hospitality industry, would have gone through the due process here in England.
Due process, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Thank you.
Honourable Minister, what I think Mr. Richardson has been asking is about advertising. And he has been asking specifically because I know that they have advertised these things, but in a limited way. I think what Mrs. Richardson is trying to get is in a broad way. Do they advertise on the medias that we have here? You can't advertise on one media and expect that the other people listening to various media here. So it needs to be across the board if that is going to be acceptable.
Well, there's a requirement for it to be advertised locally. I don't think we go down into the nitty-gritty to say X amount on Radio Anguilla, X amount on this station. I don't think we really do that. But it must be done locally. So that is the requirement. And I can assure you that when these things are done, they are carefully checked, because at the end of the day, and we encourage Anguillians, when they apply, to send in the copies of the applications to the Labor Department as well, to ensure that we know who would have applied from the local pool. Although, when the properties send in their applications as well, they too have to indicate to us who were the local applicants, why is it they were not selected, what were the particular strengths or weaknesses or failures of that system, yes.
Then, Mr. Minister, it would be fair to ask this question. Now that it has come to your attention, not only today, but sometime before, have you ever spoken with persons in those establishments concerning this particular issue? It is known that job vacancies have been advertised overseas. So the question, sir, again, have you ever spoken to the proprietors or the persons responsible for these job applications to let them know that it has come to the attention of you, the minister, through the media, what have you, that these things are happening? Because you indicated that you will ensure that you put a stop to it. And I didn't hear you say this afternoon that you had even made the point to these people concerning what you have heard. That's what I was expecting to hear from you.
Well, Mr. Richardson, we want to ensure that every time a vacancy comes up, that is fully advertised locally, that local persons have an opportunity to apply. In one or two cases before, where these positions were advertised only overseas, we would have asked them to pull them. But at the end of the day, when these opportunities come up, they must be advertised to give everybody, including suitably qualified Anguillians, an opportunity to apply. And that is something that I insist on, that the ministry and department insist on, and those are things that we check for when we are vetting and considering these applications.
One last point.
Yes,
So
sir.
sometimes people get a little edgy. But I want to ask this last point. Don't you think then that there should be somewhere where the ministry could indicate to the hotel that certain job vacancies, I don't know if I'm getting a little bit over myself here, should be filled locally, like menial tasks should be filled from overseas? Because it would appear to me, from what I've been getting, that menial tasks are being filled from overseas persons. I don't know, I'm not part of the ministry, I wouldn't know that.
Every position is looked at on its own merit, Mr. Richardson. We evaluate each position, each application that comes in.
So just a follow-on question. When you advertise locally, is there a local platform that everybody knows to go to look for this particular position? Is it always on a particular radio station or in a particular newspaper? I don't think Anguilla has a specific GOV employment website, but where can people go, anybody, to find what jobs are being advertised? What platform?
Well, there's not a specific local requirement to say that they must go on Radio Anguilla or Beat Radio or Class FM. The requirement is that it must be advertised locally. And I know on the Department of Labor's Facebook page as well, they normally will put up notices when these advertisements come out as well. So the requirement is locally. Whether it is that we should be moving to mandate which radio stations carry them, I'm not sure that the government of Anguilla should be in a position to mandate which radio station on newspaper or social media platforms. We require them to be advertised locally to give everyone a fair chance. And in terms of the properties themselves, they have their online platforms that they advertise through as well, which are available to the general public and to the workers in the industry as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Also, these job offerings can be seen on the Radio Anguilla page. And so, we can find them there if there's concern. And certainly, Mr. Richardson, when it was put out there on the internet that these jobs were being advertised overseas, this was discussed with the properties, just for your information. We'll go over to any other questions. If not, we'll go to the Ministry for Infrastructure and Tourism. Minister?
Very much, Premier. I've faulted the Honourable Minister of Home Affairs, excuse me, for being humble, because he's doing a lot of heavy lifting as it relates to the labor situation, and maybe it was an oversight, and I believe it was an oversight that through his hard work, these properties are promoting locals in good numbers. And while I say that, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Gene Proctor, who has been promoted to the lead in guest services. Lockhart Hughes, who has been promoted at Capsuluca Hotel as Director of Guest Experience. Ms. Rosette Pradel, who has been promoted as Director of Reservations. Ms. Monica Bryan who has been promoted as Director of Housekeeping, Ms. Sheila Beard, who is now the Assistant Front Desk. So some of these individuals that we just congratulated are in the top of their particular departments, and this is indeed something that we should applaud, and I hope that we can all congratulate them. So he says that a lot of heavy work is doing in the background, and I hope that we all appreciate that. The Minister for Economic Development and Natural Resources, he's in here. As you can see, he's been doing a lot of heavy lifting over there at the People's Market. We have now an agreement with the Maliohana Hotel. We must thank the folks at the Maliohana Burj for adopting the People's Market. They will now, from here on in, be taking on the relay baton. We've brought it to a particular level, and now they'll be taking on that baton, and we'll be doing a lot of work there at the People's Market to upgrade the bathroom facilities and the entire facilities. So we're going to have a People's Market that the Anguillan people can be proud of, and people will be saying around this island that change really couldn't wait. As it relates to tourism, the Premier spoke of the fact that we've been at the hotels and speaking to tourists, and sometimes taking pictures with babies. And you know, and persons, tourists coming to the island are generally very happy with our protocols, and even as we liberalize our protocols now. And the hoteliers have been coming up to us and telling us that there have been record numbers at the hotels. And this is in a pandemic era. So it bodes well for what we've been doing, what the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary and her team over there at Tourism have been doing, and what the government as a whole have been doing in order to promote tourism. Because I can vividly recall when we came to office and the island was shut down, when we started to speak about protocols and what we were doing, there were a number of persons who were saying that, oh, it doesn't matter, tourists are not going to come to the island. But look where we are today. People are gainfully employed. Some people are pushing 2 jobs. People are even coming up to me and saying, listen, I'm tired because I'm working so hard. The construction sector is buzzing because of what is happening in hospitality, and everything emanates from hospitality. And we know this to be a fact. We see it in our numbers, we see it in the revenue. The Minister of Finance and Ministry of Finance is very happy in what they're seeing coming towards the Treasury. Just to note, today, tomorrow, and every day into the future, we will see American Airlines touching down on Anguilla on a daily basis. And this bodes well for us. While that is the case, and I know the Parliamentary Secretary will speak more to that, but while that is the case, we have note that Cape Air is going to be suspending service to Anguilla because of some issues surrounding their human resources. I would leave it at that. And once that is sorted out, they'll be resuming flights into Anguilla. We are going to get on the line very soon with Sylvia Airlines, Seaborn, to see what is happening there, because we note that there's a significant number of canceled flights out of San Juan. Now, as it relates to the Valley Main Road, we're in very advanced stages of the Valley Main Road. The entire Valley Main Road has been completed. The work, the heavy lifting at the Valley Main Road has been done. Because of a number of concerns from the general public, we are trying to ensure that all of the markings, instructions are being laid on the road. We are out there every day. Mr. Johnny, he's out there laying the markings as we speak, highlighting the areas, putting in arrows and directional signs. Ron's and Ron Sign Shop has been also erecting signage so that persons, now to my mind it's not difficult, but if persons have challenges, we must address those challenges as it relates to the use of the new Carteret Boulevard. So on April 11th, and we say April 11th, on Monday, April 11th, the road will be open for persons full usage. And we say April 11th because in terms of the markings, sometimes you have challenges. If it rains, that poses a challenge. And so we want to ensure that all of those markings are done, redone before we open the road. Because once the road is open, it's very difficult to place the markings in the road. If anyone has walked the road, and I know Mr. Richardson walks the road pretty often, he gets his daily exercise now that we have upgraded the Valley Main Road. But if anyone walks that road, they'll notice that at the Parliamentary Drive, we are reconfiguring the Parliamentary Drive so that you'll have a smooth transition from the Parliamentary Drive into the Carteret Boulevard. And that work is being done. New sidewalks are going to be installed in that particular area leading towards the Lands and Survey Department. The surveying of the Louis Price Road will commence within the next week, so I believe that persons will be very excited to see that that activity is going to start there. Work as it relates to the airport road continues. As you know, we had to do a significant amount of excavation at the airport road and realignment because of the material that was below the tar, below the chip and seal. That was completed, and now we are almost completed in terms of the building back of that particular road in preparation for the concrete works of that road. That should be finished by Wednesday of this week, and then from Thursday of this week, we will see that the contractors will be in there in terms of the framing up of the road and the sidewalks in that particular road. Over at the ministry, we've also been looking at some derelict buildings. One of those is the Cottage Hospital. The other one is exiting the Jeremiah Gums Highway on the left-hand side, immediately adjacent to the George Hill Road. There's a derelict building on the left-hand side with a container in the yard. That is another area which we are looking at removing. And then there's a section of the old police station on the east side that needs to be addressed as well. So these are some of the areas that we are trying to address, because one of the things that we want to ensure is that the city looks like the city, the town looks like the town, and the valley is the town. Last week, the cabinet met with Anguilla, the board of directors, the chairman of the board of directors. I believe that it was a very informative and amicable meeting, and we look forward to having those sort of meetings moving forward. And I know there was an article that was published saying who's fooling who, but we are not in the fooling business. We are in the transparency business, and we believe that it was very transparent, and we would have hoped that the chairman would have been here, but to be honest with you, he wasn't invited at this time. But at some point in the very near future, we'll be able to sit down in front of all of you and field all of your questions so that you will see that there's no fooling around in this administration. This is a serious administration led by the Honourable Premier. As it relates to the Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, we are making some amendments to the regulations. We are bringing in new regulations, as a matter of fact. One, to speak to personalized license plates, vanity plates, the taxi. We are going to have two different classes of ground transportation. You'll have the taxi and you'll have the luxury section. Those C company vehicles will no longer be part of the picking up and dropping off services that is rendered in the hospitality industry. Driving under the influence, seatbelt regulations, child seat regulations, and cell phone regulations. Those are areas in terms of, and also the Litter Abatement Act. We are looking at strengthening the Litter Abatement Act. Just this past weekend, I followed an individual who was tossing garbage out of their vehicle along the Jeremiah Gums Highway, and I was extremely upset. And I wish I could have had the power to do a citizen's arrest, but it was very disheartening, and I was able to reach them and admonish them not to do that again. And while they apologize, this is something that should never happen on the streets of Anguilla. As you know, we reported earlier that we are also looking at revisiting the Jet Ski Prohibition Act, and that is something that we're working on through the Ministry of Tourism. So, Premier.
Any questions for the minister? I think Paul Sec will Paul Sec will say a few words. Mr. Richardson, yes. Following the Daily Herald's lead of maximum of 3 questions, please.
Say that again.
Thank you.
No, I just want to hear. I just want you to be specific. Following the Daily Herald is not responsible.
Following the lead, the maximum of 3 questions per subject.
So you're telling me there's only 3 questions per subject I can ask?
That we can move on, yes.
Well,
thank
it's not
you.
Following the Daily Herald, I hope not.
No, I just said the lead that was said.
Let's get to the point, Dr. Webster. We don't have time to waste it. Mr. Dr. Honorable Hayden Hughes, you mentioned about the market. I did suggest to you the other day, the last time I guess it was here before that, that something should be done to ensure that all persons who are selling vegetables and whatnot around the street should use the people's market. You said it had something to do with not actual legislation, but policing this act. You could shed some light on that, sir?
The people's market is not going to be developed to lay idle, and persons who wish to sell in the Central Valley area will have to utilize the people's market, the asset that we are developing for them to use. And just last week, a representative from the Royal Anguilla Police Force, Mr. Shane Connor, from the ministry, Mr. Bancroft Batik and I, we walked the entire road to discuss all of these issues relating to vendors along the road and also relating to road use. So we have a very good understanding so that the training can be done within the Royal Anguilla Police Force as it relates to the use of the Carter Boulevard.
You mentioned about aesthetics as relates to the upgrade of the Development Road, and coincidentally, someone from Eastern shared with me today that he said, Elkin, next time you go on your station, I don't know if he meant the radio station or this station here, because it's coming like a station too, whether or not he said that the General Post Office needs a facelift.
Absolutely, I will not disagree with that viewpoint. As a matter of fact, we have been doing some remedial work at the General Post Office. Not only the General Post Office, but also the library, the Edison Hughes Library. They stood in a state of disrepair over the last 4 or 5 years, where the columns were severely compromised and steel was exposed. We have remedied those situations. We noted that there are 2 beautiful plants growing on the roof of the post office. We're going to have them removed, and we're going to give the post office a facelift. So I do agree, and also I've been encouraging businesses along the Valley Main Road to do some aesthetic upgrades. And speaking to persons along the strip, I know Willie Vanderpool of Willie's Bar, he have hired an architect to redevelop the Willie's Bar, and he has already put down a concrete slab and installed electrical lines and water lines. So we see where persons have been coming on board to ensure that the area is aesthetically pleasing while we have discussions as it relates to how we can have an overall development plan for the Valley Strip.
My third question, as relates to water. From the time you came to office, sir, you was aware of the problems at the Water Corporation related to distribution. To date, what could you tell us have been done to remedy this problem?
I can't say that anything substantial have been done to remedy this problem, because from the very outset, I said it would take at least 55 million EC dollars to repair the lines. It's an old system. There's a lot of pinhole leaks. There's a lot of major leaks, and whenever you fix a major leak, another one busts out almost immediately because of the pressure. So we need a significant investment to really rehabilitate the water lines in Anguilla, and until then, we'll continuously see these issues with water. And there's no 2 ways about it. There must be an investment in it in order to remedy it. Once that investment is made, then we also have the issue of a significant amount of people who want to be on public water because some persons do not want the water lines going across their lands and other reasons. That also poses one of the challenges that we have in terms of expanding the network. But these are some of the challenges that we met, and these are some of the challenges that still prevail to this day.
2 questions from the Daily Herald. The first one, the old police station on the east side, where exactly is that? Is that in the east, or is it in the Valley area?
Good question. I hope you're not deferring one of your questions to next week, because once you don't make it this week, you lose it, right? But the old police station is where it was also the courthouse and the police station, where the Department of Sports is now. That is the building that held the old police station. Also, the Anguilla Chamber of Commerce and Industry utilizes that building. And I believe the ham radio network, and they utilize part of that building as well. But on the eastern side, if we know Anguillian directions, where the sun rises in the morning, that section is severely damaged to the point of disrepair, and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be removed, as a matter of fact.
Reconsidered, so 3 questions. So number 2, when you talked with Anglic, was the discussion focused on the financials? I know last week we talked about the financials. Was that part of the discussion? And if it was, were you all happy with the discussion?
Yeah, I was happy with the discussion. I think it was a frank discussion. I think it was an honest discussion. I think that it was a discussion with respect around the table. And that is generally what the discussion was. As you know, the fuel prices have been going up and going up quickly. And so what we noted is that based on their analysis, the fuel surcharge should be in the region of 70 cents. But even they are not proposing in the 70 cents increase. And even as it relates to the 45 cents it is, 45 cents, we are still seeing how we can alleviate some of the burden that will fall upon the people.
And my last question is the People's Market, the big concrete area that's now been poured, is going to turn into a parking nightmare. Are y'all going to stripe it, or so it will be striped for parking?
Definitely. It will not only be striped for parking, but also we met with Mr. William Van der Poel, and they will be also beautifying it with some plants, because we left some spaces that some planter spaces along the road and also along the People's Market. So it will be striped. I know the Minister of Economic Development, Natural Resources is also working on a market day, and the market day may become a frequent thing in that it would not just be an annual event, but it will be more of a monthly event. I believe the Minister also spoke to the fact that he'll be looking at a market night, and the electricity and the water is already there. The electricity work has already been done thanks to Mr. Odell. What's his last name? Odell Electrical. Odell Hodge. Thank you, Felicia. I believe you would have known that. Mr. Odell Hodge, for his work, he and his team has done a lot of rehabilitation work there. And so we're very happy with everybody who's coming on board, including the St. Lucian community that restored the roof for us.
Mr. Hughes, in terms of Anglic's meeting, could you tell us what day you met with the board, and are there still plans for the annual general meeting?
On Friday morning at 10:30 here at the conference room, all of the members save one was there. Cabinet was there, so it was a very good meeting. Also, persons from the Ministry of Finance was also there, so it was a very good meeting. We did not have an annual general meeting; it was a special meeting to discuss the finances. So, if I'm not mistaken, that meeting is to be held on the 6th this week.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah,
because
this week.
We know the meeting, the initial meeting didn't take place because there wasn't a quorum. So I was just wondering now if this meeting is still on.
Yeah, the meeting is still on. It's to discuss the finances, to bring the shareholders up to date. The Premier just notified me that it's been pushed to the 21st of this month. But it's really and truly to just give all of the shareholders, the government of Anguilla is a majority shareholder, but even though the government of Anguilla is a majority shareholder, we always believe that the minority shareholders should really play a part in terms of where the direction of Anglic should be, and also knowing where Anglic is. And this is why we seek to keep them informed as much as possible and as often as possible.
Honourable Minister, some weeks ago I did ask you the question about an instructional video and awareness being put forward for the new road that will be opened up. Any progress in that?
We have not started to develop any instructional video. Instead, what we decided to do is put directional markers on the road. And if I have to stand out there and give instructions all day, then I shall. But I honestly believe, without any instructions, I think that this road is extremely user-friendly. It's very easy to use because you have the medians. The medians direct you. There are no left, no right turns, no left turns, depends on where you are. And coming out of the side roads and so forth, there are no right turns. So I think it's very user-friendly, and people will get a grasp of it almost immediately.
I know you spoke about putting in new regulations to the use of the road. Do the agency who will have to put these regulations in effect, this agency has the capacity to handle these regulations when they're there?
Absolutely believe so. Some months ago, the Commissioner of the Royal Anguilla Police Force, Mr. David Lynch, announced here that he will be re-establishing the traffic department. And I know Mr. Fleming, Devlin Fleming, he has been discussing with us different aspects of vehicular and the Road Traffic Act. So I have no doubt that the Royal Anguilla Police Force have the capacity to police these things. The capacity and the will are two different things, and once we move forward, then we'll see if the will is there. But I have no doubt that they have the capacity to do so.
Thank you. Paul Seck, you had some information.
Good afternoon. As you may be aware, Anguilla would have updated its protocols on April 1st, last Friday, which would have dropped the need for an entry certificate for vaccinated travelers. So in order to do that process, what is ordinarily done is about a week and a half or a week before the protocols change, we have our official communication sent to IATA, and then this is reflected on the ground from the relevant departing countries, airports. However, since our new protocols, we have been receiving a few instances where persons have been denied boarding because they don't have entry certificates. It's something that we have investigated heavily. We're working hand in hand with American Airlines to address, and we are also working with IATA to resolve as soon as possible. The International Air Transportation Association. Sorry, I've been using it so much I figured that everybody would know, so apologies. Yeah, so we are working with all persons. We have, before now, Anguilla has always had a direct point person with IATA from Anguilla who represents and send all of the protocol information, visa requirements and such. So these links are already there. But I think as so many countries have been updating their protocols at the same time, there may have been perhaps a lapse in communication. But we are working on it. But any persons experiencing difficulties are asked to send an email with their full name, airline number, record locator, and departing airport to Andia Ravarier. I'll spell her name. So her email is Andia, ANDIA, @Ravarier, RAVARIERE, @gov.ai. So I'll say that again. Andia, ANDIA, RAVARIERE, @gov.ai. And so again, you're asked to send your full name, the airline number, the record locator, and the departing airport to her, and we will work very quickly to get you to paradise. So that's one of the things that we are working on. As you know, that we are, this week will begin the first of daily flights from American Airlines, and one of the things that we would have done to accommodate this with the removal of the poles in Tanglewood. So that process was completed on, I think, Friday of last week. So now that allows for about 6 more passengers and up to 2,000 pounds with the removal of those poles to go underground. And I believe that was in partnership with ANGLEC and the FCDO. So there are some developments and the Ministry of Finance. And so that's some of the work that we have been doing. And the most important update is that we will be working overtime to ensure any persons who have any difficulty boarding in the next 5 days. We do believe that it will be solved before then, but 5 days at the max, we will be working to get them to Anguilla, whether you're returning home or you're coming on vacation.
Thank you, Paul Sec, and thanks for the job at the Ministry of Tourism and Ministry of Health with the protocols. Are there any questions about anything else? Understanding the limit on questions, since we are past 3 o'clock and we were trying to meet the 1 hour.
Well, my question doesn't have anything to do with what you were talking about. I just wish the police commissioner had been here because I would have loved to get something answered from him. In terms of this uptick in thefts and break-ins that's happening on island, I would like some questions answered on that. You don't have any? Okay. I would believe this past weekend, I heard there were like 3 at least car thefts, and then last weekend there were some. And then the other issue is noise. This noise driving up and down, shaking windows. I'm so tired of it. I just want to know, is there anything being done to address these issues?
The police commissioner is aware of the noise. We certainly have had situations where we have had meetings which involved the police commissioner and concerned persons, and I know that has been addressed. In terms of the robberies, seem to increase frequency, and we certainly haven't had a chance to discuss those with the commissioner, but I will work on having him, to grace us with his presence so that you can ask these and other questions pertinent to safety and police action. So thank you for the question.
Because I'm going to write something on it. I just would have loved to have an opinion or some facts to go along with it, other than the ones that I'm going to get from the street. Which
You can
that's
call.
what's gonna-
You
I've
can
tried
always have
calling several
access to
times
the.
and,
Yeah.
You have to write to the PRO? Okay, okay?
They do respond.
Okay. And just getting my 3 questions. That was 1 and 2. Well, 1.5. Number 2 is regarding Anguilla as a 5-star destination. I think we are. And I think that we can do a lot better. Maybe we can
Make
knock
that-
the stars out and go 6.
Make that the tagline on the front
I
page
know.
this time.
Anguilla, 6-star destination with what we're going to do to help us beautify the island, though. Perhaps maybe an island beautification month where we can, get some paint, some relief with paint and fencing, something to beautify this place other than just the resort areas.
This is something that we've been discussing in terms of product improvement. Last week we met in the Ministry of Tourism and Infrastructure to discuss, the roadside bushes. And actually, instead of just chopping the roadside bushes, hedging and having them look in a particular way, we've been having discussions as it relates to how we can utilize other areas to incentivize persons to keep their properties in a particular manner. And hopefully later on this year, we'll be able to unveil something substantial that will help people and encourage people to upgrade their properties.
Now there's the Anguilla Beautification Societies, and some of the young persons along with the Rotary have been doing beautification in the villages. They had a contest, and I must say proudly that Island Harbor won one of those prizes. And so, we continue to do that work. Also, the beach cleaning, especially the Island Harbor Beach, done by the Webster sisters along with the rest of the community. Yes, so the Anguilla Enhancement Project is what I was mentioning, that along with Rotary in that regard. So there are efforts to beautify our villages, and we just want to make sure that that continues to be the focus. Certainly, as you heard the minister say, littering is a problem, and we think in an advanced society that nobody should be telling the person that they shouldn't be throwing stuff out the window, or that the trucks should be covered when they're taking, garbage, or when they're just moving around. So these are things that we're working on. Thank you for that. Certainly, Anguilla has that potential, and thank you.
Just two quick questions. Could you tell us the cost in terms of removing the poles, the 2 poles in Tanglewood?
It's just around $300,000 was the total cost. But they move extremely quickly to have it done, so we're very happy with it. I just need to mention that one of the persons who really assisted in directing this was Mr. Kendall Richardson, out of the Ministry of Tourism and Infrastructure. He has been out there making sure that everything was the way it ought to be. He's compliance in the ministry as well.
Question, Dr. Webster, now that Mr. Rogers has announced his resignation, has resigned officially, pardon? Could you tell us officially whether the APM will be fielding a candidate in the upcoming by-election?
You almost made my heart stop when you said Mr. Rogers. I thought PS was leaving. That one scared me there. But I assume you mean the Honourable Mr. Evans McNeil Rogers. Yes, I have spoken to him. I know that he spoke with the governor, and there is a by-election coming, which the election date is on the 24th of May. And for those who are contesting, Mr. Richardson, the nomination day is the 29th of April. And certainly, yes, certainly the Anguilla Progressive Movement has a candidate and will be contesting the by-election, which is scheduled. And, Mr. Courtney Morton, who has certainly been here as my right-hand man in the Ministry of Finance. He is, former bank manager, and certainly understands what it takes in terms of making sure that we can pay for what we want to do. We can't do policies unless we can fund them. He's been able to direct how we approach the United Kingdom in terms of getting funding, whether for projects that are necessary for economic resilience, and assisting where necessary to ensure that we were able to do the protocols that have helped us, with health and also with tourism. So these are all things, as I said, that our candidate, we will put him out there against anybody, and I'm sure he will stand tall, and if elected, will even do a greater job for District 3 and, in general, the people of Anguilla.
Premier, only 2 questions for you this time. And taking into consideration my good friend, the Herald, last week, I had to leave a little earlier for a reason that I would not disclose, but I heard in the recording of the press conference that you had mentioned that this administration is as clear as glass. I wasn't here to clear as clean glass, and the thought came to me.
You heard that from in my voice.
Yes, but I didn't know who had made the question, but I heard it on the radio. That you made, and you said that you haven't known of any administration that was as transparent as this one.
That might be the case.
Right.
That
I
I
would
would
like
have
to
said, but I don't remember that specific statement. Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. No problem. Thank you.
One of the things that I observed as compared with the former administration, I used to attend press conferences also, that you would give your ministers an opportunity to, put it in colloquial terms, take their own way. Versus when the other administration was in power, the premier used to do most of the talking. So I must applaud you. I don't know who came up with the idea, but you give each member of parliament an opportunity to speak for themselves. And I must applaud the administration for that.
Thank you very much. I believe in collaboration and then not dictatorship. But I can dictate if necessary and micromanage when needed.
Okay. The other question, sir, now, as it relates to transparency, had to do, this is the first question, that was just a comment, right? The first question, people out there are still up in arms as it relates to that statement that you made, as it relates to transparency, and that up to date, we have not seen any picture or anything that indicate that you took the oath of office as Premier of Anguilla. How do you want to respond to that, sir? Transparency, clear as glass.
I have pictures that show me standing next to Governor Foy, at the date, which was June the 30th of 2020, where I took the oath.
I haven't seen it.
I can't account for your vision, sir.
Wow.
I'm certainly not an ophthalmologist
No, but,
or a laryngologist.
If it's clear as glass, I should be able to see it. And so,
Well, I can provide you the copy of the picture if you want to.
secondly, sir, on a more serious note now, I got something indicating that there were some communique between you and some Anguillan company as relates to a company out of Canada wanting to provide renewable energy. And the statement went on to say that a promise was made to the chairman of a payment of some $200,000, whether it go on a bribe or something like that. I don't know, I'm on a probing. I'm probing this time, Ken Hart. I'm probing. I'm not.
I have no knowledge of such, sir. Thank you.
Very well. Seriously, you'll hear more about it. You'll hear more about it. So if it's not true, it's not true. But if it's true, no,
renewable energy companies, right? So there's a number of companies, a significant number of companies approach the government of Anguilla on a regular basis about renewable energy. And all of these companies, we pass them on to Anglic to have that discussion, because it is not really a discussion, even though we are all keen on renewable energy integration, that is a discussion for the board of Anglic and these companies to have. If they have to do a RFP, request for proposal, if they have to do a tender, then that tender will be done between the government of Anguilla procurement process in conjunction with Anglic. So that is not something that we as ministers of government will get directly involved with.
Just to put clarity, the person said to ask Dr. Webster, I have been made aware that there is a company out of Florida that you have been pushing via emails to procure a 25-year contract to provide solar energy to Anglic. And the chairman of the board of Anglic was allegedly offered a bribe of $20,000 to procure a 25-year contract, which he turned down. And the last part, can you speak to that? You already spoken to it, to say you don't know nothing about it. Very well.
We'll reiterate, I have no knowledge of that.
Even possible. There are too many layers of accountability that would prevent anything like that from happening.
Honourable Premier, yes, sir. Anguilla is an associate member of the OECS. Can you tell Anguillians what are the benefits being derived being an associate member of OECS? Because people, I think, is missing something between an associate member and a full member of the OECS.
Thank you for that question. Actually, as an associate member, I don't even feel that the difference between being a member state and being an associate member state, because they treat me as equal when we go to the different meetings. In terms of what CARICOM, the OECS provides, the OECS, Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, basically it's part of its regional integration. All these islands or nations, and we have common purpose. We want to make sure that the economies of our islands are doing good, and some of us have similar economies, whether it's tourism. Some have better agriculture, they have more land, they do these. And so we're hoping that through that you can benefit. I would like for Anguilla to be a full member, like Montserrat is. But we are not at that position yet, and we are working towards that. In terms of education, we have common examining standards in terms of health. And so all these can be integrated. And so I do think that regional integration is necessary, even though we have the status of a United Kingdom overseas territory, which I think may have been the reason why we haven't advanced to that full member state as yet. I still think that it's something that we need to continue to work towards. And but as I said, in practicality, I have been treated as the leader of Anguilla, attending these OECS meetings similar to the member states, even requesting a vote. Now I do know that the member states, they do have a slightly different status, and their votes are, when they have, as the OECS, to make certain decisions, and that's how they do it. But they do ask us, as associate states, members, to give our opinions. And I certainly do not feel slighted in any way.
I'm glad that you've cleared up that matter, because there are certain things folks are seeing happening with other islands.
For many years, I would have served as the OECS Commissioner for Anguilla. And the Premier is quite correct that the courtesies extended to Anguilla were basically just like those of a full member. I would have attended meetings, participated in discussions, had budget discussions, major policy initiatives. We all had a part to play in it. So definitely Anguilla has really benefited from that in terms even of education, as the Premier said, health through our procurement of medicines at the hospital. So I can tell you that from being involved in that over the years as Commissioner, it has been a tremendous benefit to Anguilla.
Glad that you clarified that the members of, or the citizens of Anguilla can understand the benefits that you get from the OECS, because there are still some who feel that the OECS does not give any benefit to Anguilla. But I'm happy that you were able to clarify that.
Thank you very much for the question. Certainly, we don't just, we're not just affiliated with these organizations just to have the name. And there are benefits that are afforded for that, and we want to continue as a small island state that we participate in these and these organizations, so that we can have that, together we have more power than if we are singled out. And so that's what we want to work towards. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming. It's certainly a pleasure. I want to thank, Dr. Joyce from the Anguillian, Felicia Hennis from Radio Anguilla, Don Hodge from the Daily Herald, who has set the standard for how many questions we can ask per subject. This is a call Pickering from KCN Channel 4. Mr. Elkin Richardson, our independent investigative journalist. And Dites, thank you very much. PRO is here. Ministerial Assistant Merrick Richardson, and Youth, Sports and Culture, and Minister's Parliamentary Secretary. It certainly has been a pleasure today, and we look forward to next Monday. Next Monday, just a teaser, the Inland Revenue Department has asked to be here, and so, prepare yourselves accordingly. And I'll reach out to the Commissioner of Police and see if he'd be available for next week's press conference, since there are some burning questions. Again, Dites, thank you for always being here to carry this live. And if it's Monday, and it's not a holiday, we'll be here to talk with you. So again, have a great week. God bless you, and may God continue to bless Anguilla.
Good day. Have you ever wondered why taxation matters? To appreciate Anguilla's journey to GST, we must first understand the importance of taxation. Taxation funds the delivery of essential public services and infrastructure to improve the lives and well-being of the residents of Anguilla. However, taxation is more than a source of revenue. It is a tool used to support national development by promoting equity, strengthening economic growth, and building public trust with transparent and efficiently administered tax systems. To achieve an improved and reliable tax system, the government of Anguilla took a phased approach for the introduction of a modern tax regime. The main phases are the implementation of an interim goods tax, IGT, on the 1st of October 2019. IGT will be repealed and replaced by GST on 1st July 2022. The passing of a Goods and Services Act on 29 July 2021, the GST registration period for businesses from April 2022, and the implementation of a GST tax system on 1st July 2022. GST brings many benefits for businesses and people in Anguilla. For example, people in Anguilla will benefit from modernization of Anguilla's economy, creation of a safety net, more resilience to economic shocks, and higher accountability from government and businesses. Additionally, GST-registered businesses will benefit from the recovery of GST paid on their purchases, easier maintenance and accounting records through an automated portal, and enhanced marketplace credibility and reputation. The Inland Revenue Department is preparing for the commencement of a GST tax system through launching its website and taxpayers' online portal, modernizing and digitizing its services to allow filing and payment online, training its staff, and conducting taxpayer education initiatives. What do businesses need to do to prepare? Prior to the GST implementation date, businesses must check whether they are required to be a GST-registered business by 1st May 2022, ensure their accounting systems can administer GST, maintain accounting records, prepare point of sales to capture the GST calculation, and revise pricing to display prices inclusive of GST. Consumers, on the other hand, must, from 1st July 2022, be knowledgeable of zero-rated supplies and exemptions, know that only GST-registered taxpayers can charge them GST, familiarize themselves with the GST certificate, and review receipts and invoices. IRD looks forward to engaging with the people and businesses of Anguilla throughout this journey. This is the journey to GST, the journey to growing sustainably together.